Why does faith feel so hard? Why does the world seem so powerful? Everywhere you look, it feels like the world is winning. Corruption, greed, temptation, it surrounds us. The pressure to conform is everywhere, and sometimes it feels impossible to stand firm. For whatsoever is born of God overcometh the world, and this is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith. 1 John 5 verse 4. But what if I told you that faith is stronger than the world? That no matter how dark things seem, no matter how powerful the enemy appears, faith always wins. That's not just wishful thinking, that's a promise from God. Yet most people don't live like they believe this. They let the world shape them instead of shaping the world. They compromise, they blend in, they trade their faith for comfort. Why? Because the world is loud. It offers instant gratification. It convinces people that faith is foolish, that trusting in God is weak. Spurgeon once said, "Faith laughs at impossibilities." Think about that. The world says you can't overcome this, but faith says, with God all things are possible. The world says you are alone, but faith says God is with you. So why do so many Christians still feel defeated? Why do they struggle, doubting their faith when life gets hard? Maybe it's because they've forgotten what faith really is. Faith isn't just believing in God when things are easy. Faith is standing firm when everything in the world tells you to give up. The question is whether the world is powerful. The question is, do you believe that God is stronger? Because if you do, then no matter what the world throws at you, fear, doubt, temptation, you will not be shaken. You will stand. You will overcome. But faith isn't just a feeling. It's not just something you say. It's something you live. It's something you fight for. And the only way to win is to use the power that God has already given you. So what is this power? How does faith actually defeat the world? That's what we're about to uncover. The world is always working to shape you. Every day you're being pulled in a direction, toward fear, toward doubt, toward compromise. And if you're not careful, it happens without you even realizing it. It starts small. Maybe at first you just want to fit in. You don't want to stand out too much, don't want to make people uncomfortable by talking about your faith. So you stay quiet. You let things slide. And before you know it, you've started thinking the way the world thinks, living the way the world lives. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12 verse 2. That's the battle. The world says, be like us. Faith says, be like Christ. The world says, follow your heart. Faith says, follow God. And those two voices are always at war. Spurgeon once said, the world never gives up trying to mold you into its shape, but faith resists, faith stands firm, faith refuses to bow. That's the kind of faith that overcomes, the kind that doesn't blend in but stands out, the kind that doesn't waver when things get hard. But let's be honest, standing firm isn't easy. It comes at a cost. The world doesn't like people who don't follow its ways. It pushes back. It makes life harder. That's why so many people give in, not because they don't believe in God, but because they're afraid of what faith might cost them. And yet Jesus made it clear, faith was never meant to be easy. If you choose to follow him, you are choosing a battle. If the world hate you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. John 15 verse 18. That's the reality. Faith isn't just about believing in God. It's about choosing him over everything else, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something, even when the world calls you foolish for it. So the real question is this: are you being shaped by the world, or are you letting your faith shape the way you live? Because if faith is the victory that overcomes the world, then the way you fight this battle determines everything. The world is powerful, but faith is stronger. Yet so many people live as if the opposite were true. They walk through life afraid, always on the defensive, as if faith is something fragile, something that needs to be protected. But real faith doesn't hide. Real faith doesn't retreat. Real faith stands firm, even when everything is against it. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God, I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. Isaiah 41 verse 10. That's why the first thing faith does is conquer fear. Fear is one of the enemy's greatest weapons. He whispers doubts into your mind, makes you question yourself, makes you hesitate. What if I fail? What if people reject me? What if trusting God costs me too much? But here, what the world doesn't tell you, fear is a lie. It has no real power over you. It can only control you if you let it. And faith refuses to let fear win. Spurgeon once said, "The fear of man is a great tyrant, but the fear of God sets us free." Because when you fear God, when you trust Him above everything else, nothing in this world can shake you. Not rejection, not failure, not even suffering. Think about Peter walking on water. As long as his eyes were on Jesus, he stood firm. But the moment he focused on the storm, he sank. That's exactly how fear works. It distracts you. It pulls your eyes away from God and onto the problem. And when that happens, faith starts to fade. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. The world thrives on fear. It wants you to be afraid, afraid of the future, afraid of failing, afraid of trusting God too much. But faith looks fear in the eye and says, "I will not be shaken." Faith walks forward when fear says, "Stop." So ask yourself, what fear has been holding you back? What lie has the world been whispering that keeps you from trusting God fully? Because if faith is the victory that overcomes the world, then fear has no place in your heart. The world uses fear to control people, but that's not its only weapon. It also deceives. It convinces people that they don't need faith, that they can find happiness, security, and meaning on their own. It tells them that success, wealth, and comfort are the ultimate goals in life. And sadly, many believe it. But what happens when they get those things and still feel empty? What happens when the job, the money, the relationships don't bring the peace they expected? That's when the world offers another lie. It tells them they just need more. More success, more possessions, more distractions, but it never satisfies. It never brings real peace. For what shall it profit a man, if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Mark 8 verse 36. The world promises happiness, but faith promises something far greater, true joy, real peace, and eternal security. Spurgeon once said, "Nothing teaches us about the hollowness of the world like the failure of its promises." And isn't that the truth? How many people spend their lives chasing things that never truly fulfill them? That's why faith is so powerful. It reveals what is real and what is false. It teaches you that true peace isn't found in having more, but in trusting more. The world says, "Be in control." Faith says, "Surrender to God." The world says, "Seek comfort." Faith says, "Step out in trust." The peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Philippians 4 verse 7. That's what makes faith so different. It doesn't promise an easy life, but it does promise a victorious one. A life that isn't ruled by fear or deception. A life that isn't tossed around by circumstances. A life that is rooted in something eternal, something unshakable. So ask yourself, what have you been trusting in? Are you leaning on the things of this world to give you peace? Or have you put your faith in the only one who can truly satisfy? Because the world's promises will always fail, but God's promises never do. The world is full of empty promises, but faith gives us something real, the strength to resist. Because once you realize the world has nothing lasting to offer, you stop chasing after it. You stop trying to fit in. You stop looking for peace in things that were never meant to satisfy you. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. James 4 verse 7. That's what faith does. It gives you the power to say no. No to fear. No to compromise. No to the lies that say you need more than God to be happy. And when you resist the world, something incredible happens. The world starts to lose its hold on you. Spurgeon once said, "Faith is a defiant act against the powers of darkness. It is standing firm when the world demands that you bow." And that's exactly what faith looks like. It's not passive. It's not weak. It's a battle. It's a fight to stand in a world that wants you to fall. But the question is, how do you resist? How do you stand strong when the pressure is overwhelming? The answer is simple. You don't do it alone. Faith isn't about willpower. It's not about trying harder. It's about leaning on the strength of God. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. Philippians 4 verse 13. That's the key. Faith isn't just believing in God, it's depending on Him. It's knowing that you don't have to be strong enough because He is. It's realizing that the battle was never yours to fight alone. But most people never experience that kind of faith. They believe in God, but they still try to fight their battles in their own strength. They still carry burdens they were never meant to hold, and as a result, they struggle. They fall. They feel defeated. But that's not the life God wants for you. He didn't create you to live in fear, in compromise, in exhaustion. He created you to walk in victory. And victory doesn't come from striving, it comes from surrender, from fully trusting that God is enough. So ask yourself, are you fighting the world in your own strength? Or are you standing firm in the strength that only faith can give? Because the world is powerful, but God is greater. And when you walk by faith, you don't just survive, you overcome. That's the difference between faith and everything else the world offers. Faith doesn't just help you cope with life, it gives you victory. It's not about surviving, it's about overcoming. And yet, so many people live as if faith is just a backup plan, something to hold on to when everything else fails. But faith was never meant to be your last option. It was meant to be your foundation. For whatsoever is born of God overcometh the world, and this is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith. 1 John 5 verse 4. Spurgeon once said, "Faith is not a feather to be carried by the wind. It is the anchor that holds us firm in every storm." Think about that. The world is always changing. What's popular today is forgotten tomorrow. What feels secure one moment can be taken away the next. But faith is unshakable. That's why people who truly walk in faith are different. They don't panic when life gets hard. They don't crumble when trials come. They don't chase after the things of this world because they know their treasure is in heaven. They have a confidence that doesn't come from money, success, or approval, but from knowing that they belong to God. Set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. Colossians 3 verse 2. But here's the challenge. Faith only grows when it's tested, and that's why God allows trials. Not because He wants to see you struggle, but because He wants to strengthen you. Just like muscles grow when they're pushed beyond their limits, faith grows when it's stretched, when it's tested, when it's put under pressure. That's why the world's attacks are never wasted. Every challenge, every hardship, every temptation is an opportunity for your faith to grow stronger. But only if you respond in faith. Only if you refuse to give up. Only if you hold on to God instead of falling back into fear. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. John 8 verse 32. That's the power of faith. It doesn't just help you escape the traps of the world, it sets you free. Free from fear, free from doubt, free from chasing things that will never satisfy. Because once you realize that God is all you need, the world loses its grip on you. So here's the question. Are you living like someone who has already won? Or are you still letting the world have power over you? Because if faith is the victory, then the only thing left to do is walk in it. That's the real test of faith, not just believing in God when things are easy, but trusting Him when everything is against you. Because faith isn't proven in comfort, it's proven in battle. The world is constantly trying to pull you away from God. It offers distractions, temptations, and false promises, hoping you'll trade your faith for something temporary. And many do. Not because they stop believing in God, but because they start believing that the world has something better to offer. But faith sees through the lies. Faith understands that what the world offers can never compare to what God has promised. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Matthew 6 verses 19 and 20. Spurgeon once said, A little faith will bring your soul to heaven, but a great faith will bring heaven to your soul. That's what faith does. It shifts your focus. It makes you see beyond the temporary. It reminds you that no matter how strong the world appears, God's kingdom is stronger. But most people don't live that way. They let the world dictate their priorities. They seek approval from people instead of seeking approval from God. They worry about what they can gain in this life instead of thinking about eternity. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Matthew 6 verse 21. That's why so many Christians feel stuck. They have faith, but they're still clinging to the world. They want to trust God, but they're afraid of what it might cost them. They want to live boldly, but they're afraid of standing out. But here's the truth. You can't walk by faith and live for the world at the same time. You have to choose. You have to decide which voice you're going to listen to. Because the world will always try to pull you back, but faith calls you forward. So ask yourself, what are you holding on to that's keeping you from fully trusting God? What fear, what comfort, what worldly desire is making you hesitate? Because the moment you let go is the moment you step into the victory that has already been promised to you. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Letting go, trusting completely, stepping away from the world's false promises and standing fully in faith. Because the truth is, faith demands surrender. You can't have both. You can't hold on to the world and still walk in victory. If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. Luke 9 verse 23. That's the choice. Not just believing in God but following Him. Not just saying you have faith but living like it. Not just agreeing with the truth but surrendering to it. And that's what most people struggle with. They want faith but they also want comfort. They want victory but they don't want the battle. They want to overcome the world but they're still holding on to it. Spurgeon once said, "There is no faith so weak that Christ will not accept it, but there is no faith so strong that we do not need to grow in it." Because faith is not a one-time decision. It's a daily surrender, a daily choice to trust God over what you see, over what you feel, over what the world tells you. And that's where real victory begins. Not in trying harder, not in proving yourself, but in surrender. In realizing that you don't have to be enough because God already is. And He said unto me, "My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. That's what faith looks like. It's not about never struggling. It's about knowing that even in your weakness, God is strong. Even when you don't see the way, God is guiding you. Even when the world tells you to give up, God is calling you forward. And that's why faith always wins. Because it doesn't depend on you, it depends on Him. The same God who created the heavens and the earth, the same God who split the sea, the same God who raised Christ from the dead, is the one holding you. So the real question is, will you trust Him? Will you stop clinging to the world and start walking in faith? Because the moment you do, everything changes. The battle is already won. The victory is already yours, and all you have to do is take the first step. That's the real challenge, isn't it? Taking that first step. Choosing faith over fear, trust over doubt, surrender over control. Because the truth is, faith is not just believing in God, it's living like you do. For we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5 verse 7. That's what makes faith so powerful. It doesn't wait for proof. It doesn't demand guarantees. It moves forward even when the path isn't clear. It stands firm even when the world says it's foolish. It chooses God even when everything around says, "You're on your own." But you're not. You never were. Because faith is not about your strength, it's about His. And when you finally stop trying to fight in your own power, when you finally surrender and trust that God is in control, that's when the victory becomes real. Spurgeon once said, "Faith is reason at rest in God." Think about that. Faith doesn't mean you'll always understand. It means you trust even when you don't. It means believing that, no matter how dark things seem, God's plan is greater. If God be for us, who can be against us? Romans 8 verse 31. That's the confidence faith gives. That's the victory. Not a life without struggles, but a life where struggles don't defeat you. Not a life without pain, but a life where pain has no power over you. Not a life without battles, but a life where every battle ends in triumph, because you are not fighting alone. So here's the final question. Are you living like someone who has already won? Or are you still letting the world have power over you? Because the moment you stop living in fear, the moment you stop compromising, the moment you stop chasing things that can never satisfy, that's the moment you start walking in victory. Because the truth is, faith doesn't just overcome the world, it already has. And now it's your turn to step into that victory. Not tomorrow, not when life gets easier, right now.